this is the part where I pretend that it's a whole new day, but really this is like the third one I've done today, which is cool
Fair.
because it means it's working. Um, but we're I have this policy that I've been doing, which is like if I don't know about something, then I definitely have to have this person on the show. And so today I've got Josh Meadows, who does stuff with cars. But we'll start with the first question, which is, so what was the first thing that like really hooked you, like in a deep way when you were a kid? Like the thing that like, like when you're a kid, if something like holds you for more than a couple of weeks, it's pretty remarkable.
I am a nerd in one of the most genuine senses in that I really like to learn. Like in kindergarten, they ask you, what do you like to do? And little 5, 6 year old Josh wrote down, I like to learn new things. So it's always, I was that kid that took apart the remote or took apart the vacuum or pretty
Yep.
much anything else I could get my hands on in the house. So that I love learning something new.
I killed so many of my toys because of that. I had this really cool little mini Tron arcade game. I took it apart and I was like wiring, just let's see what happens if I do this to that to this to that. And eventually I blew it up.
Oh yeah, yeah. I took one of our old vacuums, I turned it into a snowblower, which worked for like a solid 10 minutes until things started getting wet. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's have you built anything like just as a cool hobby thing besides before we get into the cars? Or is that just
Um,
kind of the impetus?
I mean, I've always done like little things like when we were kids, we played with our bikes. And so, take apart bikes, change wheels, tires, stuff like that. We lived in kind of rural Maryland. So
Oh,
we,
whereabouts?
we were in Frederick, Maryland area.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Jefferson is where we actually were. So me and my little brother, we would, build like our own little tools, like hatchets and stuff like that in the woods. And like we loved fishing. So, we'd get in all sorts of trouble outside having fun. So that, I mean, we had all sorts of little projects, anything we could get our hands on. And, some things we shouldn't, like gasoline, but, kids have fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had a whole big. I did shot a video a bunch of years back, and I had big gasoline torches in the back, and we were covered in snow, so I figured it was going to be okay. If anything really fell apart, I'd be all right. But yeah, it's so even as you age, sometimes you don't get out of that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love spinning fire and stuff like that too.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I used to do that for exercise. And yeah, so so now your passion is cars, so which I know
Yeah.
book about. So
Most people like to ignore them. And actually, just another month ago, I was having a conversation with one of my other car motorcycle friends, and I was like, I wonder what it's like to be like a normie in the car sense, and that like you buy a Toyota Camry and you drive it around, and something breaks, you take it to a guy who fixes it. Like you don't know anything about it, and you don't care. So there are definitely days where that thought has crossed my mind, and I wonder what that's like.
it's funny though,
But
because we tour, we actually we have to have a fully working vehicle all the time. So Donna is the one who knows all that stuff. Like she's
she's a
gone
handy
into
one.
the dealership. She's like, I think there's something wrong with the timing belt. And somebody goes, well, I don't know. And the other service guy was like, she knows what she's talking about. It's probably the timing belt.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are definitely things that I got familiar with young. So when I was like 21, my grandmother bought me an Acura Integra, and that was the reason I bought it is because I wanted to learn to work on cars. My previous car before that, the transmission went, and I didn't know anything about it or know how to fix it, and it ended up costing me like $1,200, which now doesn't sound like a lot of money, but early 2000s, it felt like a lot of money at the time.
Mhm.
So after that point, I was like, I need to learn how to do most of these things myself. And so we got the Integra, and I was driving it around. This is my, getting a college car. And I had only had it like maybe 5 or 6 months, and the timing belt snapped on the car. So that was, fantastic. I get it towed back to my apartment. I do not have the money to pay somebody to fix it. And luckily, at this point in time, this is when forums were a really big thing. So that was extremely helpful to me. That's where I've made actually a lot of lifelong friends that I still talk to on a regular basis, including the one I asked about being a normie. Um, and so there were how-to guides step by step, and you watch a few YouTube videos. And I think the biggest thing is not being afraid to mess it up. I mean, I am to a degree, but I also kind of know that you can, if it's already broken, you can only mess it up so much
Right.
worse than where you're at. And a lot of times I could probably pay 2 or 3 times to buy the parts and put my time into it to fix it before I paid for somebody else to fix it. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's just, I mean, it just comes out to being a little bit cheaper.
Mhm.
So that was really the first time I did anything outside, like changing my brakes or checking my fluids or anything like that. So that was definitely a big experience at that point. And it built a lot of confidence. I ended up, replacing the head because one of my springs had also broken in the valves, which is really weird and doesn't happen a lot. But the person before me probably mistreated the car a lot. So I learned, a lot from that car. I ended up swapping multiple motors and transmissions into that car over the 10 years that I had it. And then when I decided I was, ready to do something different, I ended up, parting it out and selling it after a motor blew up on me.
So is this what you do now professionally, or is it just still your passion and the thing you just enjoy for fun?
No, on and off throughout like my college years and stuff for 5, 6 months at a time, I would work on cars for other people and do regular maintenance and stuff like that. And it seemed like every 5 or 6 months I'd run into a project that just something went so absurdly sideways on me that I didn't want to look at another vehicle for months, didn't want to deal with my own projects or anything. So while I was going through school, I kind of learned that it's better to just let that be, a passion than it become kind of something that overwhelms you. You get home from work and you're just like, I have no desire to turn another wrench, when I get back to the house type of thing. So it's definitely a hobby, sometimes like while I was putting this together, it was like kind of a full-time job because I was coming home and it was a bare shell and we kind of had a deadline. So my first kid was being born and my wife wanted me to do a burnout for our gender reveal. And so that required getting the car running. And at the time that she requested that, it was like maybe May of 2024. And I got the car back as a bare shell in October of 2024. And from there, I did everything myself in the garage and I got it started in January 7th of, or sorry, those was all 2023. And then January 7th of 2024 was when I actually first got it started. So it's been running for a little over a year now. And there's been a few little things that have come up along the way, but I've put almost 6,000 miles on it. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, so walk me through the whole thing. So you got the when you say bare shell, you mean it's just just the frame and the
Yeah. And if you want to insert some photos after this, I will send you some photos of when I picked it up. The car was a black car. It had no engine, no transmission. It didn't have hardly any of the wiring in the engine bay. So none of like your radiator, any of that type of stuff. It didn't have like any of the interior, none of the plastics or anything. Didn't have the dash. So it was pretty much bare. It's what we would call a roller. So you could roll it back and forth. It had wheels and everything, but everything other than that, it was completely.
So did it used to work and all this stuff, or was it like a made for?
Oh, gotcha. Was it like a kid or something like that? No. So
Right.
this is it's a '93 Mazda RX-7. In the U.S., we got them from '93 to '95, and then they stopped selling them here. They sold them worldwide to like '02. But there were like about 13,000 of them made in left-hand drive, driving on the left side of the car type of thing. So they're somewhat rare, and then they're also a little weird because they came with what people call a rotary engine. So there's no pistons, no cylinders, none of that. When people talk about like V6 and stuff like that, this would not have any of those qualifications. So it has two what we refer to as Doritos, but they're kind of like a triangle shape, and then there's an ovoid shape inside that it rotates through. And I can send you, if you want to put like a little gif of how it works, I can send you one of those after this too. So it's something different. I had never actually worked on a rotary vehicle before this, and I'd never built a car from scratch, from that bare of a shell. So it had been through about 100,000 miles when I bought it, according to Carfax and whatever the history type of stuff is. And then it had gotten pulled apart over the years. The motors require maintenance that some people aren't necessarily aware of. They, by nature, a default burn oil. Like they actually inject oil into the motor from your motor oil. So if you don't check it every 3,000 miles, you will actually run low on oil just by default, by design. And then there are other things that are just different that kind of tend to shorten the life of the motor. If you get 100 or 200,000 miles out of a regular 4-cylinder car, Camry or whatever, that's not unheard of. It's pretty normal. 100,000 miles for this type of application would be more than I would expect. I'm out of my build. I probably expect to get like 50 or 60,000 miles of harder driving than originally designed for. But yeah, this was the first time I had done a lot of things. So I learned how to build fuel lines. I learned how to build my brake lines. I learned how to put a rotary motor together. One of my friends helped me assemble it here in my garage. And then, I just a lot of different stuff. I really wasn't familiar with wiring. I don't like wiring particularly, but this has an aftermarket ECU because it's got an upgraded turbo and a whole bunch of other stuff it didn't come with. And so the only option was to really go what we call a standalone ECU, which completely replaces the factory computer and requires somebody to come in and kind of map everything that the car does. So by doing that, it required wiring in, because I have two fuel pumps instead of one, and wiring in two electric fans on their own relays, and all sorts of little things like that as well. So there were a lot of small projects that I learned a lot about along the way, and learned how to do wrong a couple of times as well.
So I just got off with Martin Atkins, and we were just talking about how, all the things that you do wrong inform everything else. And I was like, yeah, with pretty much everything I do, it's always like anything I do right because I've done it wrong every other way possible.
100%. Yeah, I definitely learn a lot from what I do wrong and significantly less from what I do right.
Yeah. If it just pops in, it's like, oh, okay, well, there you go then. But then you have unreasonable expectations for everything else because you expect it to happen.
Just to work. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely unrealistic.
So did you have to source, like, how specific are the parts for that car? Did you have to, like, find specific things specifically for that type of car, that vehicle, or are you able to kind of go through a catalog and play mix and match with what makes sense?
So everything that pertains to the motor itself is something that is very specific. Luckily, there are a few aftermarket manufacturers that have offered a lot of support. And surprisingly, even though Mazda hasn't made the car in 23 years, they still make entire motors and sell them. Now the price has gotten a little out of hand. They're started asking $13,000 as the manufacturer suggesting pricing for the motor, and used to be able to get them for like 6 or 7. So they've definitely, especially post-COVID, have gotten expensive. But the fact that they still offer, I mean, everything. We're talking about like all the seals inside of it, all the springs, and everything that you need inside of the motor, they still make and sell. And then there are also actually quite a few aftermarket options for a lot of those things as well. And then once you get past that, things like the turbo itself, I picked a specific one for the application, but it's something that luckily is off the shelf. So I mean, there are a lot of little things that are different. Like for instance, most of your cars, your radiator is straight up and down, and it's right here at the front of the car. Whereas this is what we call a V mount. So the radiator and the intercooler are both kind of pointed this way, and so the air can hit both of them. So it's just something a little different as opposed to just standard design. And that's partially just because of room, and partially because the nose of the car is so low, so you can't really fit a lot up there, anyways. So I mean, there are definitely a few things that are different and very specific, and then luckily a lot of things that can be generic, like the fuel pumps are what people call Hellcat fuel pumps that come out of the Dodge Hellcat. It's the same one that's in there, so I have two of those. And so a lot of things you can find that you can work and get to crossover.
Can you hold the computer up so we can hear it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then as you go around it, it'll turn more purple. I can send you some photos. It's kind of hard to get sometimes in like one lighting, but it flips from like a dark blue color to a purple color.
Oh, so it's an interference color. That's cool.
Yeah, it's an interference pearl, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we had that.
That's cool. You're familiar. Yeah, it's really awesome. One of the coolest things to me, because I'm not a paint person. Paint and body is the one thing I don't touch. I want it to be more perfect than I think I can get. Now, watching you do some things, I've learned that, sometimes you just got to make the mistake and cover it up. So,
or you just let it be part of the thing. But I don't know if that works
too
as well with things like this, because it's the smoothness to it,
Exactly. But one of the coolest things about this is the car is actually black, and this won't surprise you, but it'll surprise a lot of other people. And everything is just a pearl in the clear coat. So there's no purple on the car. There's no blue on the car. It's actually just a black car. And that for me was really cool. That was just the first time I had really gotten that intimate with that type of paint. And so for when we were ordering supplies and everything, and my buddy told me, he's like, oh yeah, no, it's actually gonna be cheaper to do this, which I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's a cool feature too. So that was really cool learning about. I had no idea that would change things the way it does just based on the base color underneath it.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's neat shit. I remember it's neat shit, and it's almost impossible to find a practical application for what I do for just regular paintings because it
Mm-hmm.
just stands out weird, but
Yeah,
it's
I can
perfect for
imagine.
this sort of thing. So, do
Yeah.
you have a favorite part of the process that you enjoy doing? Like what's your favorite part to work on?
I really just like tinkering with things. So right now I'm working on, let's see, this should go away and you can probably see my seat over there. So this is my driver's seat
Hmm.
uh, that I'm working on a set of custom rails to go in the car. So that'll be something that actually probably after we finish up tonight, I'll start kind of testing out and fitting and seeing how everything went. Because I had a buddy scan. He came out with a 3D scanner, scanned the seats, scanned the car, scanned me sitting in the seat in the car. So we got positioning and everything. And then he was able to, kind of design the brackets we needed.
Oh,
So that's one of the next things I'm doing. AC is coming up soon too, because it gets miserable here in Florida. Summer last year was not easy.
yeah.
So not maintenance is probably the best way to put that. I mean, I do the maintenance. I get it needs to be done, but it's the most repetitive, the least exciting.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, anything that adds a little bit of power definitely,
Hmm.
makes it a little bit more interesting. There was a period of time like we started tuning the car and it was probably somewhere in like the high 400s, and a friend's got an R35 GTR, so like the newer Nissan GTR, and I think he's making like 650 or 700 horsepower. Now, granted, he's heavier. The car is very light; it's like 2,700 pounds. But we started going out, and we end up in Mexico one night or something, and we might see who's faster. And there was a period where he was significantly faster than me, and so I started talking to my tuner. I'm like, well, what can we do? What do I need to change? What do I need to upgrade? So I ended up changing out the turbo, and we ended up in the boost a pretty solid amount, even on the bigger turbo. And got to the point where me and my buddy are pretty even. Depends on who gets the launch as to who takes the win. So I still haven't hit a dyno. I don't really know how much power I make, but somewhere north of 550. So it definitely
You
moves
know what
down the
that's
road.
like? So that's RPM. What's the in human terms? Was that miles per hour for
Um, so I mean, it's kind of hard to quantify because I don't know exactly where the top speed would lead me. Probably somewhere in the 180s, which I have not done. I allegedly have probably been into the 160s, but I mean, as far as so like your Toyota Camry, even nowadays is probably like 230 horsepower or so in a car that weighs 4,000 pounds, versus making like 550 horsepower in something that weighs 2,700 pounds. So it's significantly quicker, even than it probably looks. I mean, most people know what a Hellcat is, that it makes like 707 horsepower. I am significantly faster than a stock Hellcat, significantly.
we when we were much younger, and by we I mean Donna, took our minivan up to about 100 in the middle of Texas or Mexico or something, and managed to not get out of the ticket, but like didn't have to go back to
Yeah,
yourself. So that was very nice of the officer to
that's fortunate in Texas too, because they
yeah.
are not always the kindest.
Well, I think that being a beautiful woman goes a long way when
That
you're,
definitely helps. And I mean, he might have been surprised the van got to 100 too. That
well,
impressing
yeah,
them doesn't
yeah.
always
I
hurt.
think I think all of us were, um, and terrified.
Yeah,
Um, but the minivans that we drive are just fantastic, and I'd tell you what they are, but I don't remember. It's black and it's smooth, and you know,
get you A to B.
yeah, it really does, and it's always nice because we'll roll up next to if we're in a band or on tour with like a band that's kind of like a conversion van or something. We'll just be like, "Hey, what's up? How those seats? How's that gas mileage?" It's like, yeah, we don't
Yeah.
have much space as you guys, but we're way more comfortable.
Yeah, the little
We have
things in
working
life
AC.
definitely. Yeah, yeah, I'm ready for that. That's for sure.
Well, that's cool. So, do you have do you know what your next car is, or is this the project for?
This is definitely the long-term project. As far as other cars that I'm trying to figure out what the next daily is going to be because I've got a kid and I can't have a stock car. So like I've got a Mazda Speed 3. It's a cute little hatch, but with a car seat in the back, it was definitely getting tight. So I lean more towards the wagon. I'm not as much an SUV person. I'd rather have a wagon or even a van, honestly, than most SUVs. So I'm trying to weigh the practicality of being able to like tow this to a track or something like
Mhm.
that, versus how much I'm going to enjoy the vehicle as a daily driver. So I mean, if I had my say, something like a Nissan Stygia, which is a wagon that they made, it's only right-hand drive, but it looks like the old Skyline, except you just turned it into a wagon. So like the one, I don't know if you've ever seen Fast and Furious, but
No, they
it's
exist.
a sporty Skyline car. People love
Mhm.
them, Nissan GTR. So it's that in wagon form. Basically, you can even put the motor and the front end into it and make it look just like one. And it'd definitely be fun. I don't know if I'm willing to spend the money on that project anytime soon, but
I
yeah,
keep
I'm trying
telling
to figure
Donna
out what
Lynch
that
El
is.
Camino
Oh, I
just
do love
because
those
they're so
vehicles.
ridiculous. I just
Yeah.
as a concept, I tend to like anything that's really excessive, and I think there's the El Camino is just for every single reason they're completely excessive and pointless. I love it.
Yes, they're a living mullet. They're fantastic.
Right? Yeah, exactly, exactly. But we also do live in the middle of nowhere, so I could be using it to carry big pieces of wood around. So you never know.
Yeah.
Um, how long did it take you to get it to from zero to working?
So I bought the car, funny enough, on my wife's birthday in 2018, with the stipulation that it has to be that I have to finish the car. Um, you already know how projects go. They're never actually finished. So I mean, I guess it means I have to keep it. So oh no. But I bought it as that bare shell in 2018. Fortunately, I found somebody that sold me an interior before like prices have skyrocketed. Now that between COVID shortly after, and as well as like them importing RX-7s and Skylines and all that stuff, and of course, people my age can start affording them. So we start just like the boomers bought their cars from the 50s and 60s. We're buying our cars from the 90s, and so prices have gotten insane. Like interiors and stuff, people are asking $6,000 and $10,000 just for the interior plastics and the dash and stuff like that. So I bought those well before things got crazy, and so that definitely helped. But I didn't have all of the parts together until about 2023. That was really when I was prepared to actually start assembling things. It was a little bit earlier than I probably had directly budgeted for, but when the wife gave me the go ahead to do a burnout out front of my house to figure out what my first child was going to be in the car I wanted to build, I was like, well, I mean, that means I have to do it. So I put a little bit of money on the card there to finish everything up, but it's funny because everybody tells you this, but until you do it, it's hard to really foresee. But it's not the $2,000 and $3,000 items that really bite you in the ass. You finish up the car, it's registration, it's car insurance, tires, getting the car aligned, getting the tires installed, all those little things. And then as you're doing other things, it's not like, the giant piece, it's the little fittings and the tiny little, bits and pieces that are just a little different for this versus that, or needs this angle versus that.
Mhm.
Those are the things that really, I mean, they add up in a way that it's just hard to understand until you've done it. And you've run through a lot of electrical projects, so you already
Well, it's
know.
funny because I have often described this to Don at one point. Like I was sitting there and I was working on it, and I was just like I stopped and I was like, "This is my project car in the garage.
Yeah.
This is the same thing." And that's only part of it. Like there's an entire rack of like sensor over there and stuff that's down below and all this other stuff. It's
Oh yeah,
yeah.
and I see like that iPad thing that you've got set up that's got all that stuff flowing
Mhm.
through it. Like I know we haven't necessarily specifically talked in the past, but the little projects you do fascinate me. Sometimes I don't know what the hell they do, but just seeing you assemble all the little pieces and be like, this is what I've got, so I'm gonna make this work. I love that.
Yeah, well, that was what got me on the whole iPad thing in the first place. Because there's this like 20 years ago, the very first touchscreen MIDI controller came into existence called Lemur, and it was its own standalone thing. It was like 2 grand or something like that, but you could program it. And it looked like, I think rather intensely, like the the controls on Starship Enterprise, the touch screen controls, and you can like, I need 5 knobs. Okay, there they are. This is what they go to. Um, and then one day somebody gave me an iPad 1, and I was looking around, and you get Lemur for $25 off of it for it, and I was like, well, shit, it's
Right.
like, and at that point, if they'd been around for 8, 10 years or whatever, so you can buy them for a song, and it's like, so you get that, buy it once, and then have 5 Lemur controllers, across the
Hell
entire
yeah.
thing, or whatever, and so it's like, I got me really interested in that idea of just like being able to use stuff that like, well, I can afford, but also
Yeah.
that I hate how, we're always constantly upgrading and getting new stuff, and the other stuff just kind of sits there not being used for anything.
Yep.
So it's like looking around and figuring out like what can you do with some of this stuff, and turns out it's quite a bit if you just like put the time into it. Or hell, even with iPads, you can buy like little circuit boards, cut them in half, and attach these and turn them into monitors. So like, yeah, like, and they're like $25. It's the wiring's real finicky, but yeah, so you can actually just do that too.
That's cool. Yeah, I love little stuff like that, repurposing things. Like if
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have like a fancy garage or really any fancy tools. Most of my stuff's like Harbor Freight stuff. I don't have a
Mhm.
lift or anything crazy. This is just what I can get done with what I can afford to do.
Commercial time. All right. So this one's real quick. Um, I mentioned on our one of these that I've done a bunch of covers. Literally, the only thing I can think of that's specifically appropriate for this particular interview is I did a Gary Newman cover, not of Cars, but he did a song called Cars, and I did a song called Dead Heaven that he did. It's on my covers EPs, the Compromat EPs, Stoneburner Sound System. You can find them through Bandcamp, stoneburnerofficial.com. Yeah, and that's I'm a huge believer in that. Like I get people asking like, hey, what kind of paintbrushes do you use? I'm like, I don't fucking know. I buy them at Walmart. Like
Right.
like I buy them, and I take really shitty care of them, and I throw them away. I buy them in bulk, and most of the time they're fine. Every once in a while, they'll fall apart and get bristles all over everything. But otherwise, it's like, I don't know. I don't I really hate the idea of like, I've known too many musicians who are like, when I get this piece of gear, then I'm going to really go to town with writing stuff. And it's like, you're not. You're just trying to find something that's going to write the song for you, or make it so you don't feel scared, or whatever it is. And because it's just like, yeah, it's not about any of that shit. It's about just learning how it works. And then, you know, I don't know. People get so ahead of themselves and think it's the something that's outside of them. And it's like, man, give me some mud and a stick and I can paint something. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, give me a few wrenches and a couple of ratchets. I will figure it out. It
right.
might not
Yeah.
look good sometimes, but we're going to get home.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm just, I keep bringing this up every episode, but yeah, it's so just, all of this just comes down to making the decision that you're going to figure out how to do it, and then just doing it. And, yeah, there might be an easier way with more money or more tools, or whatever, but, um, yeah, you just sit down and start, and keep at it. You don't let it kill you if something doesn't work.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's one of the wild things about the motor in particular for this is, since there's only so many of them and not a lot of cars made them. Like Mazda's the only production company in recent years that has ever produced one. One other company did, but they were tiny in the 60s. So finding shops that are willing to work on them, you obviously run into people with a big backlog. The price, a specialty pricing, and there have unfortunately been quite a few shops, even some just recently as 2 or 3 years ago, that have folded with, people just their motors just gone. The parts that they took their car there and delivered the car with, seats and stuff like that, they're just gone.
Oh, oh,
Parts they paid for aren't there,
right,
stuff they supposedly bought through these people. And then these shops close. And I mean, I know quite a few people that they're out 20, 30, $40,000 that they were paying the shop because that should have been the right way, or
right.
maybe the easier way as far as skills, but it still bites you in the ass. So sometimes you can spend all the money you want and still end up with not a great result.
Have you had any glorious failures?
I have definitely had quite a few fun little things, especially like wiring and figuring out, making sure that things are waterproof, making sure that things are, coated properly, making sure that I've got the right crimping tool for things. You can't, for the longest time previous to this, if you smash it together with pliers and then you pull it and the wire sticks, what's going to happen? It should be fine. But, learning a lot of specialty connectors. I had undersized something for one of the fuel pumps, and that burnt a wire through a fitting. So, and of course, it's a specialty fitting that turns 90 degrees and is, good to be on top of fuel for long
Right.
periods of time. And, nobody wants to openly be like, oh, yeah, this is that connector. So now I've got to, on Facebook, join wiring groups, talk to these people, send some photos, be like, hey, what type of connector is this? Can you help me figure out? It's a 2.5T. People just, it's great to have other nerds out there like that, because you show them a picture and they're like, oh, I know exactly what that is. Like it's fascinating sometimes. I love that you can post almost anything online and somebody will find it.
Mhm.
And then, now you've got the whole Google Lens search thing that I'm
Right.
getting more familiar with. You snap a photo and Google's like, oh yeah, here, this is what it is, which is, also actually a good use for AI.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, living in the future is very cool. I'm a big fan of it. I don't I was actually thinking about earlier how a lot of how I write how, the stuff I'm writing right now, it's very, very dependent on stuff that is from the last 5 years, like the way my process, because I it involves taking a bulk sampling almost and then using that to as starting points to build songs. And like sampling's been around for quite some time, but doing it the way I do it is actually kind of really processor intensive. So just kind of thinking about how, or this that rock album I was talking about, like um, that I wrote that over 2 weeks while I was on my back in bed because I herniated a disc, and so there's like not one single actual instrument on it, but you'll never know. So like just living, I love that. I love being able to live in the future like that. Um, I had a question on top of all that stuff. Oh, I remember I was going to say the geek thing, the nerd thing is fucking amazing. Like I was on a Facebook page one time and this guy was talking about like the gear he uses, and I guess their parents stepped in. It was like, well, don't give away all the professional secrets. And it was like, fuck you.
Right? We're not gatekeeping shit. Like,
Like
let's just
we
make
all
shit work,
use the
man.
same shit. We're just
Right?
curious about the nuances of what it is because like I can tell you how I do anything that I do and you're not gonna it's never gonna be the same because you're not me,
Exactly. Yep.
you know, and like so it's just yeah I was just talking to Martin about this. I was like knowledge wants to be out there. It wants to be like I'll show anybody how to do anything I know how to do
Oh,
for
absolutely.
better or for worse.
Oh yeah, I get myself in trouble a lot. Like for a while, I was a handyman, so I naturally kind of got it out. So then COVID came and kind of destroyed that for a little while. But I've always, if I see somebody stuck in the middle of the road, I'm the person that like, even if I'm heading home from work in my uniform or whatever, I'm getting out and pushing them out of the way, and I can't just push them out of the road. I got, well, what happened? Like let me take a look. And so for better or for worse, I love helping people, and I love being able to share that knowledge, because what good is it if it's just for me? If I can help my friend, or I can help somebody, even if I don't know them, if I can help them. Me and a buddy taught his kid how to change his brakes the other week, and it was just a lot of fun. And
Mhm.
then I'm sitting there looking at his kid changing the brakes. I'm like, one day we're going to sit here and we're going to give my kid the same shit, teaching him how to change brakes. It's just there's a lot of fun in it that's beyond just, oh, I have this knowledge over you. I mean, it's so much
Right.
more fun to see other people succeed like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And my whole thing has always been like, because I've had people who will be like, bragging or whatever. I'm like, I'm not bragging. I love what I do. And I want you to love what you do as much. And if I can help you, if I can help accelerate that, then I would absolutely love to explain to you why, oh, I don't know. If you add this paint to this paint, you get this thing. And if you're like, because that's the shit that I'm like, yeah, that's the good stuff,
Absolutely.
or
Oh
like
yeah.
using this font instead of this font's fucking cool. And this is why.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Me and my painter, he's one of my best friends. He was in my wedding. He's great people, and we sat down and we talked about all sorts of different stuff. And I mean, I'd be at his shop for a couple hours, and we'd just be talking about different colors and how he mixes stuff, and like just the fact that it's so easy for him to just put a couple of things in a can, and like while we were doing this process, he'd put a few things together, mix it up, whip this out, and he'd sit there and he'd show me something on a stick. He's like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, I have no idea what that's going to look like when that's dry. I mean, it looks cool right now, but I don't know. Like, and then he sits there, he's like, okay, whips out, he'll spray a card, one time, two times, three times, four times, get you different layers. Be like, oh yeah, well, how much depth do you like? It was just, it's so wild seeing that expertise and just seeing it look so effortless, knowing that they're 20 years invested into getting to that effortlessness.
Mhm.
I love seeing it. It's so much fun seeing somebody like just that intensely passionate about something they're doing, to where it just rolls off the cuff. It's nothing for them.
I've been taking martial arts with this guy, and he's been doing this for his whole life, and so we'll go through stuff, and then I'll just watch him. Like he'll show me something, and then he'll do it, and watching the fluidity and it's like, okay, there's clearly like this exact angle that you're doing this stuff at, and it's really neat. Like just kind of, or he'll just do something on me, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I totally understand exactly why that's not, what the difference between this and this is, and wow, that really fucking hurts. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's amazing to me. I love being around people who are that good at what they do,
Oh yeah.
and they can just do it. Donna's a good example of that. When we first got together, I'd play a game because she's got perfect pitch and she's got opera training and stuff. And so I'd be like, sing middle C, and she'd start singing it, and then I'd slowly bring up the volume on a synthesizer, and sure enough, that would be it. I was like, okay, play, three above middle C, and she'd do it.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. Like I can paint, but everything else that I do, it's all like tools and just learning it enough to make it work.
Yep. Make it look good.
Yeah, yeah. So like I like if somebody put a gun to my head and said paint this, I could do that. If somebody put a gun to my head and said write a song with just the guitar, yeah, you know. So,
Yeah.
but but I'm still enthusiastic about doing all of it. So I think in the end, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Like you end up
Absolutely.
still figuring out what works for you and how to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think just it's that tinkering aspect of things. I love doing that. I mean, we garden when the weather's nice in Florida and not unbearably hot. And you're just learning about different things. Like as a kid, you don't think about, when is the good season for cauliflower? You're like, cauliflower's always on the shelf. It's always out there. Well,
Right.
it's actually really hard to grow cauliflower in Florida because it wants that cold weather, which we don't get a lot. And then you also have to have the time to plant it ahead for the plant to be big enough. So, we learned over a series of years that, if you plant it at this time, they get this large, you hit these cold snaps and you're in a good setup. And so it's just, all those little things. And then you go somewhere to buy seeds or you'll buy some plants, and all those people are so passionate about what they're doing. You can ask them anything. They're like, oh no, you do this, you do that, add this. Have you tried that? And I love finding those places in the world. It doesn't matter what that is. I love seeing that expertise and learning a little bit from them because
Well, that's
there's
why
always
I'm
something.
doing literally why I'm doing this is because that passion and that information, it's so contagious, and I think with all the bullshit that's going on, I think it's just so important to remind people that you can enjoy things and there are things to enjoy, and maybe hopefully somebody will learn something or get, hey, I want to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I tried really hard to do a YouTube channel while I was doing the build because I'm like, I've got a lot of good stuff for content. I'll mess things up along the way, to be great. But I found that I do not have the patience to like rewatch something the like 3 or 4 times it takes to, get that cut, add that little bit in, make this look good. I want to change this here. And those little things like that just ate at me. I have so much respect for the people that like can take the time to sit there and go through that editing
Oh, I'm
process
not
because
doing
it's
any of that
just
shit.
crazy. Yeah, I can't
A few
believe
other
it.
things I might add the stuff that you send me, but otherwise, like, I've got this pretty much set up. Like, I'm still gonna have to, like, I'm putting some commercials in these for my own shit because
Yeah.
half of the reason is to like, make people aware of what I do. But that's probably going to be the extent of it. Like, I'll tag something out at the beginning and do some of that shit, but everything else, yeah, I don't have the patience for that. And
Yeah.
honestly, about this whole thing is just about like trying to be as honest as possible. And let's face it, I'm fucking lazy.
That's fair. And many
So,
things like that, I'm with you there too. Like they always tell you, like you don't buy a mechanic's car because he knows everything that he can get away with just letting be wrong. Fuck that
yeah,
window switch. I don't need it. I don't roll that window down anyways. It's not mine. So yeah, that 100%.
yeah,
But
yeah. You know exactly what you need, so it's built specifically for your thing. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I think one of the biggest things that this particular project has taught me is that it's very easy to be overwhelmed, and
Hmm.
it is very easy to tackle the project that's overwhelming. But even something at this level, it's not rocket science, but even something at this level, you're getting a moving car together. It's still just a whole bunch of tiny little systems. You nail down the radiator setup, you move on to the intercooler. You just, as long as you can digest that
Yeah, you
one
break
piece
it
at a
down.
time, and then and the other thing that everybody in a group called Sloppy Mechanics on Facebook, it's the biggest thing they say, because tons of people take on these projects and they want to swap a motor and do a turbo and all this stuff and tune it themselves, and they get just lost. That's how a lot of these aren't on the road. There's probably maybe 5,000 of them registered on the road in America, left out of the 13,000 that they sold here. Maybe not even that many, honestly. Is people get overwhelmed by that project, and even if it's only an hour a night, just
Mhm.
do that hour, spend that time, get that progress in, and you'll start. It'll start to snowball in your favor instead of just overwhelming you.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because when I started doing this, I've been thinking about this for like years, like and I really, and as I kept, it finally came up, and I was like, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, I'm going to do it. And I put the thing out on Facebook. It was like, okay, just talk to me, and then I had to do the, all right, all right, I'm going back to that post. I'm going to start writing this shit down. All right, okay, 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 cool. And so it's just kind of figuring out whenever I have to learn a new piece of gear, it's the same way. It's like it can be so overwhelming. So I try and like figure out what I always think of as an end, like how can I make this immediately useful? Like when I
Mm-hmm.
was learning to play guitar, I was trying to learn with proper broken chords. And I tried that for a few months, and I was like, and then somebody showed me bar chords because I didn't know. And, I was like, oh, okay, this is immediately usable, And so in 25 years, I've written like two songs with proper chording, and everything else is just bar chords. So it's just like, just figuring out how to get it into something that's like, okay, I've committed to this. Now I have to do it or I look like an asshole.
Yeah,
Or just, okay, now I can do this and make it immediately useful. And, yeah, it's the act of kind of going, okay, it's this
yeah,
thing that you just take that big sigh and I'm like, all right, I'm going to actually do this now.
yeah. Oh yeah, there were a lot of nights where I was just like, I just have to go in the garage.
Mhm.
My wife would be like, "What are you going to work on? What are you going to do tonight?" To be honest with you, I don't even know. I'm probably going to go
Yeah,
stand there for 10 minutes and stare at it, and something's going to catch my eye, and I'm going to start with that, and that's just what we're going to do tonight. So yeah, it's definitely easy to get lost in that chaos, and there were many times where I was, but a firm deadline helps.
yeah,
We When we did
absolutely.
the burnout, I didn't have a backup. My best man, I sent him a link for pink tire smoke and for blue tire smoke, and he bought the tire. He took the wheel, got it mounted, so he just showed up with it that day. So I had no way to know,
That's awesome.
and we had no backup. Nobody else knew. Like I didn't have a firework. I didn't have like a banner that says it's a boy. Like we had nothing. So if the car didn't run, which it even literally the day before, so the Friday before the Saturday of the event, me and my tuner were going through because the sensor was telling me I had no oil pressure and we couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. And so we were just digging through. I'm fighting with wiring. He's checking different things from the computer and stuff. And like, I mean, I'm up till like midnight the night before, and we're like, we know it's building oil pressure. We're going to shut the sensor off, so at least we can do what we're doing and stop having the system trigger. And so we figure that out. We move past that. It's 1 o'clock. The party starts at 3. It's 1 o'clock. I'm not getting the car aligned at the alignment shop around the corner. Like I could not have cut it any closer to get it done with absolutely no backup whatsoever. But it all, it came together in the way that it needed to, and it all worked out.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times it's like we're leaving for a tour and I'm up the night before kind of rewiring something that was like, this would be a better, more efficient way to do it and
Yep.
that kind of shit. One thing, and maybe this is useful to somebody watching along, one of the things I learned about this thing, doing this, is that I have ADD and it's great and it's a useful tool sometimes for getting shit done or coming up with ideas, but it's not good when it comes to instant gratification, things like that. Like you want to work on the entire project and get it done. And something, and but I found like when I started working on this, I went into it going, this will not be done in one sitting, and that's okay. And kind of reminding myself, it's like everything, it's just incremental. It's like get the subsystem together, get the subsystem, get the racks mounted. All the racks are mounted. Okay, get the cables all done. And so like, but having that kind of really in your head that it's not something that's going to be done overnight, and it's not something you can do at one sitting. It almost becomes kind of calming because you're like, I don't really have any time crunch on this. I'm just putting together as much as I can. I'll do this for an hour or so, and then I'll go and do something else.
Yeah, negotiating those expectations that can
Yeah.
change everything in the way a project feels like it's going. I mean, it can be the exact same process, but knowing and expecting it versus still not done, still
Right.
behind. That makes a big difference.
Like its state of not being done is not the like you don't look at it as the bad thing. It's just this is, like it's like, yes, I can't play with it yet, but I still enjoy this process, and I know I'm taking and trying to do it very slowly to make sure that everything's right, so I don't have to go and turn the thing around and like
And
all
enjoy
of these
it.
are on
Yeah.
wheels, which was one of the better innovations I had. So that way, if there is something wrong, I can just and get back into it. But yeah, it's like this can't be your life, like the project
Yeah.
can't be your life. You're married, you have to go spend time with your wife. That's a good thing. And so, it's figuring out how to let it not eat you, is definitely a huge part of that.
If I ever get to the point with the car where I don't have a next thing that I'm planning to modify, I think I would be genuinely worried because I that's one of the reasons beyond just the budget aspect of things that I can't just go buy a car and drop it off at a shop and be like, all right, here's $30,000. Just
Hmm.
make it do the thing. Because I don't think that would be satisfying to me.
No.
It just it wouldn't there's a certain feeling, and I mean there's some drawbacks to being so intimately connected with something, and you'll definitely understand it. Like I'm looking at the beast behind you, and I'm in awe. It's you've got all these things, they're connected, they're doing, like they're all clearly functional. Why else would they be there? Like this is amazing. You can look at that very easily and be like, I know that's broken, that button doesn't work, that should be connected, but I don't have time for that shit right now. And I mean, there's very much the same aspect for this. There's I could do that a little better. I could change that. That could be a little cleaner. If I pulled the carpet, I wouldn't want people to see that. So there's I try to get away from that feeling because it is so easy to be like, oh yeah, I mean, it's a pretty car, but I know all the things that are wrong with it.
One of the
And
weird
that,
things we had to learn as the bands progressed is, and we learned got better was like, with our first three records, the songs on them are good. People like the songs. And but when we listen to it, it's like, wow, the production is shit. And it's weird to like I had to learn to not say that to people
yep,
because it's kind of like you've invested a lot of energy into listening to the songs, and it matters to you. And the last thing I should ever do is to take that away from you, even if it's just by like negating the quality of the production or whatever. It's like, no,
yeah,
because the songs matter, and that's fucking cool.
yeah,
So it's like you have to get out of your own bullshit and your own like, I don't know, just like, and let people have the thing. Let people let it exist for them.
yeah. That's definitely something because now that I've built a car that I feel like is worth taking to a car show. I've started going to some car shows. I've never been huge on going to them just because I'm the type of person that I go, I do my stroll around, I talk to whoever I'm going to talk to, and I've seen the thing, I'm ready to go. So to go for a car show would be there for 3 or 5 hours to me is a long time to be committed to it. But then you see the crowd of people walking up and people looking at it, and people are like, oh, look at that, and like noticing the little things that you've done. You're like, oh, okay, all right, that's cool. Like I can take you around. I had the wheels copper plated for the faces of them, and so that was a very stressful process
Mm.
because I had to ship them to California.
Oh, wow.
But against the purple, it actually looks pretty cool.
Oh, I'm sure.
Let's see. So
Oh,
you can't
very
see it a ton, but yeah, I mean the faces of them are actual copper, and it's copper
nice.
plated. And so people ask, they'll be like, "Oh, what color is that?" I'm like, "No, that's actually copper plated." Like
All right, that's cool.
it was crazy, and it was just an idea I had. You can definitely relate to that. And I was like, I think this will look cool. And it has paid off at this point. A lot of people definitely appreciate it, but it was shipping them to California because it's the center of the wheel, and if that gets lost in shipping, everything else I have is just worthless. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
that alone, and then is it going to turn out the way you want? The car wasn't done. So it wasn't like I get that instant gratification of,
Mhm.
we'll just assemble them and put them together. They sat in the house for, I think, like 8 months, maybe a
Yeah, it's
year
always
before I
funny
could
when you get
assemble
like
them.
something like that and you're like, okay, well now I have this and I
Right.
can't do dick with it, but I have it so when the time comes.
Exactly. And it's the same thing for these seats. The purple seats, I've had those for like 2.5 years sitting in the closet inside and just knowing the day was coming. But, got to pick where the money goes and it's got to be
Right.
budgeted certain ways. But yeah, people appreciate those little things. And that, I don't mean that makes it worth it because it was worth it to me. I like
Of
doing it,
course.
but that adds some value to having done it and some
So
validation to it.
all of my artwork that I do is leaned up against one wall in our kitchen. And then occasionally people buy it and then they send me photos and they'll get it framed and put it up on the wall. And all of a sudden it looks like a real painting because I'm used to just seeing it either when I'm doing it, and in which case I'm seeing it as the art guy, or it's this thing in my kitchen that's taking up space. And so, yeah, I mean, when I get to see it on somebody's wall like that or at a gallery or whatever, it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like it helps you kind of go, all right, that was worth it. That was, and so I imagine it's a very, very similar experience, like being able to kind of see it through other people's eyes.
Absolutely. And to have a car that I pulled up to a meet Sunday, and I mean, it wasn't a particularly large car meet. I didn't expect a lot of people to be there. And next thing I know, there's like 15 people gathered around my car after I pulled up. And I'm like, oh shit. Like,
That's
and, a
awesome.
couple of my friends are like, look, you got a crowd. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, cool. Like this is what it feels like to have a car that you pull up. People are like, oh damn. Okay. So, it's definitely, it's a cool feeling, I
Mhm.
mean, it's definitely not the reason I built it, but
Right.
it's definitely a cool side effect. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like exactly, like I do what I do, and it's also really awesome if people like it. I'm going to keep doing it, but it's like when, it's when you get those messages or whatever, it's like, okay, that worked.
Yeah, absolutely. They saw what I was going for.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
No, I love that. The art is still art, and the mediums tend to really not matter.
yeah.
And the motivation tends to not matter too. I mean, I'm sure that there are people that are like running around, essentially with a flashlight on their thing, going like, "Hey, I made this." But I think the art that I tend to like and the people that I tend to like are the ones who are like, "That's the important part. I'm just over here."
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
like I'm just the vehicle for that existing.
Right. I just made it. I get to be the caretaker of it while I have it. And I don't know when that day will be, but there'll probably be a day I'm sold I can't drive it. And then, dear God, I don't know what I'll do. But
Well, yeah, this happens every couple times a year, maybe. I'll be like, kind of. I'll get really fidgety or something. And I'll be like, what's wrong? You've been like all fidgety. I was like, I'm between projects. Everything just
Mhm.
the way things worked out, like, all of these things ended and now I don't know what to do with myself.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a unpleasant place to be. But it also does require that, okay, I'm going to start this next thing because you don't have to worry about that when you actually know what's going on. Like when you have the project happening, you're just kind of
Yeah.
gliding, just like following the inertia on. You know what the
Yeah.
next thing
Keep
is.
riding that high, keep riding that wave, and keep it moving.
Right. And so knowing you're going to now start a new thing, like I've gotten to the point now, like I just put a record together to send off to my guy who does the final mixing and mastering. And I've already started like 3 songs on whatever the next thing is going to be,
Yep.
because just that way it just kind of keeps going.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love a good project. I mean, we've got motorcycles over here too. There's always something I'm doing on those. There was a point where all 3 cars and the motorcycle all had something going on, and it was just I actually took a Monday off work so that I could just sit here and get the car stuff fixed.
mhm.
And so yeah, I mean, it comes in waves like you said, but yeah, being in between projects,
Yeah.
it's definitely awkward. It's a different feeling that I'm not as used to for sure.
Yeah, it's weird and I don't like it. I remember like the first time we went on tour in Europe, there was so much build up to it.
Hmm.
And we get there, and and we didn't even have a van. We were in a station wagon, and I was sitting there, and at one point I just kind of was like, I don't know what to do with myself. I am so used to there being all of these things that I'm getting ready, and now we're here. And at one point, I was just like, this is my job. My job is right now is sitting in here and going off and doing this thing. But like our first tour in Europe was our first full tour ever. Like we'd done shows, but nothing like that. And so it was finding that new mindset was like, okay,
Mhm.
my job is to make sure I have eyeliner and to make sure my shit's in tune, that kind of thing. But it was definitely a weird paradigm shift.
Yeah, and when things feel too easy for that moment, you're just like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's coming? Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. There is a certain level of anxiety. Like, did I do something wrong? Something's coming out. Yeah.
I must have missed something. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for being part of this.
of course.
I will. Do you, since this is kind of a private sort of thing, I don't know. Do you want to tell people where to find you if they're interested in this sort of thing? And you certainly don't have to.
Yeah, I mostly post on my Instagram. So right now it is BGR dash the mutt THEMUTT. So yeah, I mean it pretty much is always correlated. So if anybody's interested in following that particular journey, including seeing things I destroy, which I'm definitely good at that. I've already blown the transmission up. So there's always fun stuff going on, and some videos of some cars seeing who's a little quicker, here and there. So yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. Cool. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you as well. Pleasure.
It's 4 in the morning, the end of December. I'm writing you now just to see if you're better. New York is cold, but I like where I'm living. With music tonight.